She's like an old stapler. Still works but doesn't fit the pace anymore. That's what I heard him say. Mason Corrick, the new coup, fresh from some trendy fintech revered, still wearing his hoodie like it proved something. I wasn't supposed to hear it. It was a closed Zoom prep with the board before the quarterly review. I was dialing in early to run a back-end sound check, but they'd already started. And Mason apparently didn't check if his mic was muted. He laughed after he said it. So did two of the junior VPs. She's reliable, one added, but she gives off filing cabinet energy. I sat there, 19 years of loyalty compressed into the shape of a stapler. I was Jenna Carile, lead systems architect of LayerLock and Vanguard, the secure global access infrastructure powering Stratport's operations across 27 countries. I had built this system from the ground up through acquisitions, through data breaches, through midnight feral collapses and cross-border compliance crisis. When the Zurich server melted down in 2014, I was on a call for 29 hours straight, patching manually from a hotel lobby during my wedding anniversary when a Russian botnet targeted our partner firms in 2017. I rewrote our defensive code in time while eating instant noodles at my desk. Mason had been here 9 months. His first act as coup outsourced core security reviews to a third-party firm in Prague. His second, stripped DevOps of independent oversight. His third began replacing department heads over the age of 45. He didn't know me, he didn't care to. I didn't scale. He once told HR off record, I didn't fit the speed, but what hit hardest wasn't the insult, it was the laughter. How easily they chuckled, like my entire career had been reduced to something old, slightly rusty and vaguely in the way. I sat, frozen at my desk, blinking at the screen, the heat reezing behind my eyes, not from anger, but from shame. I wasn't even fired yet, and somehow I already felt discarded. It's funny how one careless insult can make you question everything, and yet the truth of who you are doesn't vanish just because someone younger, louder, and shinier doesn't see it. After that meeting, I didn't quit. I didn't retaliate. I didn't even reply. I shut me laptop and sat in silence. Not in defeat, but in reflection. I started at Stratusport when we were still just 6 floors of leased office space and a dream of global logistics integration. Back then, I was Jenna Carile, junior network engineer, 26, new to enterprise systems. Terrified I'd fry the entire grid if I misconfigured one switch. But I didn't fry anything. I learned fast, worked late and showed up every day like it mattered, because it did. Within 4 years, I was promoted to systems lead. I designed the architecture for what eventually became LayerLock, our internal access protocol that scaled as we expanded across continents. Not flashy, not customer-facing, but it was the nervous system of everything. Then came Vanguard, our proprietary global credential infrastructure. I built it from scratch, coded it in phases, field-tested it across time zones. I created silent network that kept 19,000 employees connected securely. We launched in Germany, Brazil, Singapore, Dubai, 27 countries, 19 years, 0 system-wide failures. Not once did LayerLock collapse. Not once did VanguardNet go dark. There were scares, sure. In 2011, a configuration bug from an external vendor almost bypassed our permission tree. I caught it at 3:41 a.m. and patched it manually. By sunrise in 2017, when a hostile entity tried brute forcing our credentials in waves, I introduced randomized checkpoint variants and outpaced the attack before. I was never the loudest in the room, never the one asking for applause, but I kept the lights on. And 5 years ago, I turned down a CTO offer from Vitrionics, the same company now leading EIL supply chains in Asia. Their recruiter said, "Name your price." Ackland. I stayed, not because I lacked ambition, but because I believed in what built. Here, in the team, in the system, in the mission, because loyalty still meant something to me. In that moment, I reopened my old employment agreement, 2008, back when we still used paper signatures. I flipped through the scanned pages, half out of nostalgia, half out of something else I couldn't yet name. And that's when I saw it, Clause 17.6. System Contingency Authorization. A line I had written into the architecture proposal, and had the foresight to bind legally to my role. Still active, still valid. They'd forgotten. I hadn't. They started disappearing quietly, not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece. By end of Mason Core's 3rd month as coup, 5 senior engineers were gone. Nosendorf's no announcements, just off, he said, realigning talent. What he really meant was replacing experience with obedience. He moved fast, like all disruptors do. Claimed we were bloated, legacy of it. He replaced our internal security audits with a third-party vendor based out of Prague. Cheaper, newer, more agile. He said our DevSecOps pipeline was too slow for a scalable future and stripped oversight from my team. I pushed back politely, professionally. I documented my concerns, presented risk scenarios, and proposed phased integrations, but during one meeting, when I raised a question about protocol integrity, Mason cut me off mid-sentence. You're not resisting change. Are you, Jenna? Because nothing kills innovation faster than nostalgia. That word nostalgia was his label for anyone who'd built the foundation he stood on. What he didn't know or didn't care to learn was that our layer lock framework wasn't just code. It was woven into every client portal, every executive dashboard, every CROSPR compliance module. You don't unplug and rewire a nervous system overnight. But he didn't want nervous systems, he wanted speed. Applause, his next bullet point for the board. 2 weeks later, I got an encrypted message from Pavlis Dark, one of the lead engineers of the Prague firm Mason had outsourced to Jenna. I hope it's okay. I reached out directly. There's something off. We found credential traffic rerouted through a deprecated IP. Not ours, not ours. Looks like someone internally is piggybacking access off the Frankfurt nodes. We weren't told about these users. Frankfurt, one of our German clients' financial sector, high sensitivity. I ran my own diagnostic, and the log showed a new DevOps hire had been granted admin-level clearance without flag, without redundancy, without two-factor on a core EU node. 3 days later, I got word from our German liaison, a partner firm had received misrouted documents. Confidential quarterly projections, not meant for them. The contract they'd been finalizing worth $4.6 million collapsed overnight. They blamed a technical glitch. I knew better. But when I tried to report it internally, Mason System emailed me back. Thank you for your concern. Jenna, please read workflow inquiries through our innovation office. Innovation. That waste word they hid behind. But I knew what I was looking at. Not innovation. Infiltration. And the man leading it all didn't just misunderstand the system, who was actively unraveling it. Worse, he didn't trust people like me. So now I didn't trust him. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been too obvious, too confrontational. Instead, it crept in like frost under a closed door. Small things, subtle omissions, quiet removals. No one announced, but everyone understood. The first sign came when I tried to access the layer lock permissions matrix to run a quarterly sweep. My credentials bounced, access denied. I figured it was a system delay, but it didn't resolve in an hour or by the next morning. No explanation, no ticket opened, just silence. The next week, a calendar invite for our global compliance sync never arrived in my inbox. I thought maybe the new junior scheduler had forgotten to include me until I saw the screenshots in a follow-up email. They'd had the meeting without me. They discussed CROSPR risk flags, biometric signature reviews, and a new IP deployment model. For Frankfurt, I reached out to Mason Feast. No response. Reached out again. Still nothing. That Friday, I asked Mia, one of the newer engineers I'd been mentoring to, forward me a test log for the North American Access module. She replied within minutes, cheerful and unaware. Sure things sending over TEFL permissions grid were validating. Internally, I opened the spreadsheet. At first, I didn't register what I was looking at. My eyes scanned through columns of names, color-coded roles, active timestamps, and then I saw it. Jenna Carile revoked. Not inactive, note pending review. Revoked. My name had been manually removed from Layerlock's access nodes, access I had architected, trained for, and maintained for nearly 2 decades. I didn't breathe for a moment, just stared. 3 months ago, I had missed my daughter's college graduation. I was supposed to fly out to Austin, watch her walk the stage instead. I was in the server room at 2:24 a.m. patching an emergency vulnerability that threatened to expose our South American client credentials. The breach was real. The fix was critical. No one else could do it fast enough. She understood, she always did. But I never forgave myself. And now they were erasing me quietly, systematically, and without ever looking me in the eye. I had built the rules of the system. Every access key, every redundancy, every fallback layer. I knew what they were doing. And worse, I knew what was coming, because when a system starts revoking its architect, what follows isn't innovation, it's collapse. The morning after I saw my access revoked, I sat down at my desk, opened a blank document, and began writing what would become my final formal warning. I didn't use exclamation points, no bold red flags, just clean language, risk matrices, and system impact summaries, because emotion gives them an excuse to dismiss you. Logic doesn't. The subject line was clinical layer lock, core exposure, urgent access, anomalies Frankfurt NA nodes. I detailed misassigned permissions. I included the prog. Vendors alert. I cited the German contract loss, though no one had officially linked it to internal failings. I referenced potential violations of EU privacy law given the admin-level clearance granted without proper encryption protocols. I wrote it the way I'd written hundreds of security advisories before neutral technical verifiable. I sent it to Mason, CCED, IT legal risk compliance and the DevOps escalation chain. I even sent a copy to the assistant CTO, just in case. Then I waited. An hour passed, then 2, then 4. At 3:15 p.m., I got a reply. It was from Mason's office. 3 lines. Thank you for your input. We've reviewed your concerns and consider them non-actionable at this time. Please focus on current transition priorities. That was it. No questions, no follow-up. Just a digital pat on the head and acquiescent shove toward the exit. My hands stayed still on the keyboard. My jaw locked tight. I didn't scream, didn't type a fiery rebuttal, didn't blast out a reply all. Instead, I opened a separate, secure browser window. Stratusport maintained a compliance submissionism called Archive 6, a dormant internal inbox that received quarterly submissions for legal audits. It wasn't monitored in real time, but every quarter. The compliance team ran automated checks to service anything marked elevated. I knew this because I had helped design it. I forwarded my memo there, but this time I attached something else. A file titled Core Loggen 6B Access Recon.log. It was a raw activity log. Buried in it was evidence that Mason had manually approved a credential override on a core module without redundancy, without a version. The log wasn't easy to read unless you knew what to look for. I highlighted it in yellow. Then I hit send. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't hint or whisper or warn. But in that moment, my anger boiling, sharp coiled in my chest, finally found somewhere to live. Not in shouting, not in protest, but in documentation. In the record, in the system they thought I no longer controlled, and eventually, someone would find it, and when they did, they wouldn't be able to look away. The message arrived at 6:01 a.m. No greeting, no explanation, no human touch. Termination confirmed. Effective immunity. That was it. Just for words. After 19 years, 3 continents, 4 system architectures, 17 overnight saves, and not a single failure, I was removed with a canned line of text and a time. I blinked twice at the screen, wondering if it was a phishing scam. I hovered over the sender. No red flags. It came from the official automation account, an automated message from no reply at stratusportcp.com. I checked again. Not a dream, not a mistake, just finished. No one called. No one met me in person. No thank you for your service. No offboarding protocol. No dignity. Just a trigger. And that word confirmed hit me like ice in the lungs. Because I remembered something no one else did, something buried beneath the years in the meetings and the updates and the upgrades. 2011. Back when we were still patching firewall breaches, manually at 2:38 a.m. and praying the VPN tunnels wouldn't collapse during live deployments. Back when we didn't have the resources or the personnel to fight off a Nadatzak that locked down our Madrid server farm for 3 hours. That's when I built it. Protocol Hyen, a contingent summationism, invisible, silent, not a backdoor, but a safeguard. A rule embedded into the heart of Vanguard, its access architecture. If primary architect is removed from system without direct human authorization and a specific trigger phrase is used, global access keys begin automatic revocation cascade. The phrase I'd chosen, termination, confirmed a phrase no real person would ever use to fire someone with decency. A phrase so sterile, so detached, so corporate, it would only be generated by an algorithm trying to sound human. The moment I read it, my pulse dropped. Not from fear, from recognition. I minimized the message and opened my private console. The one no one remembered still existed because I wasted one who built the shutdown protocol registry to begin with. Access granted. Lines of code scrolled, automatically, one by one. It began. EU node flagged, Singapore node initiating lock. New York finance cluster disconnecting external credentials, Admin master list clearing authority chain. I sat there, complete a listal, wrapped in a thick electric silence. This wasn't a plan. This wasn't revenge. This was architecture obeying its conditions. The system was doing exactly what I'd programmed it to do 14 years ago. Not out of spite, out of safety. Because I had always known one day someone wouldn't bother to read what they were deleting. Someone would prioritize speed over protocol, image over infrastructure, and that someone had finally arrived. So when they pushed me out of the system, they pulled the plug on themselves. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I closed the message, stood up, and made coffee. I didn't panic, I didn't scream, I didn't call anyone. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table with my coffee still warm, opened my personal laptop, the old silver one, with the scuffed corner, and logged into a legacy console I hadn't touched in over 6 years. The login prompt blinked twice, paused to verify the biometric fallback, then opened smoothly. Access granted. They'd forgotten about it because only I had ever used the redundant systems bridge I built during the Madrid. In 2011, it was never listed on the active access registry. I'd routed it through a back-channel dev node to isolate it from attack patterns and apparently from memory. I watched as protocol Heian began its sweep. Frankfurt's credential tree cleared first. One by one, European node managers dropped from the admin roster. Then Singapore core gateway locked. External vendor keys nullified. API ports throttled to 0. Then New York 3 red flags hit at once. The finance cluster blinked out just as a director tried to log in from his Upper West Side apartment. I recognized his name, Marcos Lin, Executive VP of Global Finance. He was mid-negotiation with a private equity firm rumored value $72 million. He would have been deep in a call reviewing documents in the shared environment I built. I watched as the system rejected his login twice, then permanently. It wasn't personal, it was procedural. The architecture was just following the logic. Each removal followed the same relief: the architect is terminated without direct authorization and no human countersign is present. Revoke all permissions tied. 2 global access keys. The phrase termination confirmed had in the rest. The trigger had been hit. The cascade was clean. Surgical. I didn't type a line. I didn't press a key. All I did was observe. From the outside, it might have looked like chaos, but from here inside the core, I saw precision. I saw order. It was exactly how I designed it. When people build systems, they often imagine failure coming from outside hackers, viruses, rogue actors, but I had always known the greatest risk came from within, from people too rushed, too arrogant, or too careless to understand what they were dismantling. So, I had prepared, not for revenge, but for recklessness. They thought removing me would be quiet. They didn't realize removing me would activate a system louder than any voice I could ever raise. I took a sip of coffee, watched it as Tokyo dimmed on the map, then Sydney, then Toronto. There was no malice in me, only calm. They had made the decision, they had typed the trigger, and now all I had to do was let the code run. The call came as Sydney dimmed on the dashboard, a quiet flicker of red over the Pacific. I didn't rush to answer. I let it ring 3 times before I tapped accept and raised the phone slowly to my ear. What the hell did you do? Mason didn't even say hello. His voice was sharp, cracking under the weight of panic. I could hear keys clattering in the background. A tech assistant muttering something about Singapore, failing to verify master credentials. We've lost Frankfurt, Singapore, New York. Everything's going dark. Are you seriously behind this? You need to stop it right now. I stayed silent for a breath, listening not to what he said, but to what he was becoming. I didn't do anything. Mason, I said finally, voice even, almost clinical. The system did what it was designed to do. Don't play smart with me, he snapped. We're losing life contracts. Do you have any idea what you've triggered? I did better than he ever would. You used the phrase, Mason, termination confirmed. That's not just cold. That's a trigger. He paused, confused, then furious again. A trigger. What the hell does that mean? Clause 17.6. I said, calm, precise. My employment contract dated May of 2008. Still active, still invocable. There was a long aching silence on the other end. I imagined him scrolling through legal files, now searching, fumbling, maybe reading the clause for the very first time. That clause gave me the right to build a contingency protocol into Layerlock and vanguard it. I continued, in the event of not Without executive countersign, and if a specific language cue is used, the system triggers automatic revocation of all global access tied to the primary architect. This is insane, he muttered. You can't be allowed to build a bomb into our infrastructure. It's not a bomb, I said, it's a seatbelt and you just queued it mid-collision. This can't be legal. It's documented. Every quarterly update, every audit trail. You just didn't read it. He went quiet again. No yelling, no, just breathing fast. Heavy. Can you undo it? I didn't answer right away. I wanted him to sit in the stillness to feel what it was like when power left the room without slamming. The PTAR's